straightforward. None?
Is there any financial impact about this one?
Well, this is a grant that would go into the Child Development Fund, and so, again, the revenues and the expenditures match. So you'll see this grant within the Child Development Fund.
Good.
Other questions? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Irma Archuleta.
Aye.
Virginia Baxter.
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg.
Aye.
Doug Otto.
Aye.
And Sunny Zia.
Aye.
8.5, resolution carries. Our next item is 8.6. Thank you. This is another resolution agreement with the California Department of Education. This is for state preschool programs. Could I entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Otto, second by Trustee Baxter. Questions, comments, members of the board? Same scenario. Same scenario as the previous resolution. Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on this item.
Irma Archuleta.
Aye.
Virginia Baxter.
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg.
Aye.
Doug Otto.
Aye.
Sunny Zia.
Aye.
8.6 resolution carries. Next item is 8.7 resolution. Thank you. Disposal of district property with a collective value of under $5,000. This is a regular agenda item we see all the time. But could I entertain a motion to approve this item, this resolution? Motion by Trustee Archuleta.
Second.
Second, please. Second by Trustee Baxter. Questions, comments on this item? There's a motion, a second on the floor. Hearing no questions or comments, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Irma Archuleta.
Aye.
Virginia Baxter.
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg.
Aye.
Doug Otto.
Aye.
And Sunny Zia.
Aye.
8.7 resolution carries. We're now to 8.8 resolution. This is the contractual agreements and amendments to agreements under $175,000. Can I entertain a motion to approve 8.8 resolution? Motion by Trustee Baxter. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Trustee Archuleta. Questions, comments on this item, resolution?
I have a
Chair
question.
recognizes Trustee Zia.
I'm a little bit puzzled and confused as why this is coming before the board. The language that is in here, for some reason I can't pull it up. I'm having problems. What are we trying to fix? Why are we trying to streamline procedures? What's the issue here? I'm a little bit puzzled, and especially since this is coming before us before the Communications Committee's report on how to effectively do our reports. Can somebody give a little bit of a description and background on why we're doing this?
This is something that the county requires on an annual basis, so you will see this every year that will authorize the amount that I can sign for contracts, and the next one as well on the change orders. It's an authorization to allow me as the Vice President of Administrative Services to enter into contracts under $175,000, and then those would come back to the board for ratification, just as you saw earlier under the consent agenda, and the same for the change order. So it's really something that we're required to do by the Los Angeles County Office of Education on an annual basis, just to reestablish the authority that is provided for signing contracts and change orders. There's no change. This is the authority that I currently have and have had since October 23rd of 2012, when we started the CUPCA guidelines. So the CUPCA guidelines are the California Public Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Guidelines that allows us to have a higher bid limit for our public works projects.
Right, so are you saying this is a requirement that we're mandated at this level, or is it just they give us the option to have this increase in threshold?
The County Office of Education requires that the board pass a resolution establishing the dollar threshold of authorization for signing contracts. So this amount is not required, but this is the amount that the board has previously allowed for contracts to be signed and in the next item for change orders to be signed. And then, of course, they always come back to the board for ratification after they've been signed.
Right. So the issue that I take with this high dollar threshold, I mean, I've consulted and I've worked for as an employee, as a business owner to public agencies for a long time, and 200,000 was the maximum, and we just a few years ago went through it in an agency that goes through millions, if not billions, of expenditures, and that was an issue. And the reason why I say that is that because I feel that as it is, and this is again, I'm not trying to criticize what we have or what previous board members have done. Please understand that I'm challenging us to be better, and I don't want to come across as though I'm sanctioning anyone. But I think this is a high limit. Comparatively speaking with other districts that I've looked at, it's pretty high of a threshold. That's not to say that Vice President Gable, you're not doing a good job and your team is not doing a good job, but I think we need the scrutiny. If anything, we need to increase that, and as an elected body, and I have a tough time when I see ratification for a change order, multiple change orders of $100,000 up to $100,000 or $175,000 contracts that is just maybe few words at times or a sentence explanation, and I have to kind of press for, well, what was the process followed each time? And I know it may be agonizing for some of our folks, but I'm trying to fulfill on my oversight role as it is with this threshold, and I think it's too high. We need to really look at providing additional scrutiny and not decreasing it, or I think this is a high limit as we have. I've been hoping to get the communications report to bring this up at that time, but since this is coming before that report that our committee, Trustee Otto and Trustee Archuleta, are working on, I can't support this. I think we need to lower this threshold.
Okay, Chair recognizes Trustee Baxter.
Ms. Gable, do you know what the average is in the state for approvals of these processes? I'm sure you communicate with other community colleges.
I do, and it really does vary by district. Some have the same level of authority as I do, others don't. Most of them that don't haven't adopted the CUPCA guidelines. So, it really is across the board, and it's a district-by-district decision.
All right, again, this is a resolution that required by the Los Angeles County Office of Education. So this is why we're submitting this resolution. That's what the motion is on the floor. Other members, questions, comments? Yes. Chair recognizes Vice President Otto.
Are you able, Anne Marie, to say what the effect would be if this was a lower number? I mean, would it increase the cost of doing business? Would you have to assign more people to look at things? What is practically, would it decrease efficiency or effectiveness?
I think it would decrease efficiencies and effectiveness just by the fact that it would slow everything down. I think if you look at the agenda tonight, there were 4 contracts on there that were under $175,000 that came to you for ratification. It would really, I would say, slow down our bond program in a lot of the areas, because we would need to wait for board approval before we could move forward, with anything on the bond program. So it's really, this is the recommendation. I think we haven't had any issues in the past 3 years that we have been doing it. We haven't had any audit exceptions where they found any, problems with our internal controls. We're still following all the guidelines that we're required to follow, you know, as it relates to purchasing and getting the bids and the quotes and, you know, the, everything that's required. So it's really up to the board.
And what's, I'm supportive of this. In a perfect world, I wish we could all look at everything in real time and have the information to be able to evaluate things. But what sells this for me as an all right number now is the fact that I don't think that there's anybody up here that can point to even one problem that we've had while this has been in operation. And so I think I'll sleep better at night knowing that that there have been no problems, that we've been doing this for 3 years, that all of these contracts and change orders would come back to this board for scrutiny. And so I don't want to just say, well, we're going to do what we're going to make the process more cumbersome, more difficult, micromanage what's going on, if you will, if there's no discernible benefit at this point to gain. Now, maybe in the future something could happen, but I'm comfortable with where we are now.
Other members of the board?
Trustee Kellogg, I
Yeah.
have something to add to that. You know, I have a slightly different perspective and difference of opinion. I can't say that I would agree that there hasn't been a problem in the past 3 years because I'm fairly new. This board is new, and I'm uncomfortable with this high of a threshold and would recommend we lower it. I'm not saying we micromanage, and you know, with that kind of argument that look, we're not trying to tie up the hands of staff, well then why don't we just get rid of an elected body? Why don't we just increase the threshold to 500,000? What about 1 million, just to speed things up, and with that kind of rationale? And I would absolutely object to that, because the more this is a control, the board is a control, and auditors don't, have they been asked to look at this threshold and they said it's okay? I mean, it was a part of their testing. I mean, that's really the key here. If they looked at it and say, look, other districts are okay with, do they have the same limits with the type of expenditures, with the size of the district that you have, then I would have pause. But in this circumstance, I think it's way too high. I don't know what that number is based on. Is it 175,000? Where do we get that? Why is that different from 100,000? What's that? Where does that come from? And I know there's planning committees. I get that, but I mean, what is that? What is that magical number?
Chair recognizes Trustee Archuleta.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to ask you, you said this is required by the county, so what would be the impact if we didn't approve this?
The threshold isn't required, by the way, by the county.
Well, the impact is we wouldn't be able to sign any agreements or change orders until we had a resolution from the board giving us authority to do so.
And then also, and maybe this would sort of help to clarify matters, but we do have a process in place, right? And for contracts?
Yeah,
Can
an
you-
extensive process, yes.
So what does that process entail?
Well, for any item that we want to purchase, it depends upon the dollar threshold, but, you know, for the most part, we require quotes from vendors to establish that we are paying a fair price. If it's under 45,000, we need to have 3 quotes for services. If it's between, I think 45,000 and 175,000, then we have to do like an informal bidding process. The 175,000 requires us to go out to formal bid, so that's where that dollar amount comes from. And that's for public works. You know, the formal bid limit on equipment and those types of purchases is around 85,000. I don't remember that number. So with those, that comes to the board as well to authorize awarding the bid in those items.
Okay, so we do have, I think it's important for community to know and the public to know that there are checks and balances in place to ensure that there's no wrongdoing, or that there's going to be no questionable practices. You know, if we have it at this particular threshold of 175,000. So I don't know if that will help Trustee Sia.
No, absolutely not, because I don't know what that number is based on. I'm not questioning the checks and balances we have. I'm certain that we have great checks and balances in place, but that amount is too high. I mean, I'm willing to live with a lower amount just to help with efficiency, but what is that number based on?
Can I get us focused back? The motion on the floor is about this resolution to the County of Los Angeles. The questions I'm hearing about, which are good questions, are about the total number, which is a change in our policies and procedures. That's not what we have a motion on the floor. This is
I'm
to send
asking questions about the amount that
Trustee
is
Zia,
in
let me
the
just get-
resolution.
on the motion. The motion is this resolution to the County of Los Angeles. That's what this is about. If we have questions on those limits and things, that is a good question, but it's not what we're discussing right now. It's the resolution to the county, and not a discussion on whether the limit is appropriate or not.
Right.
It's what we need to send to the county at this time.
Mr. Kellogg, if I may, thank you for clarifying that. And what I'm essentially trying to say, and perhaps in a very long way, is that I'd like to make a substitute motion to make a resolution to the county with a lower threshold. That's what I'm saying. And I would like to make a substitute motion. Are you saying that?
I will
I see you want to provide input.
make the motion then. Just simply make the motion.
Well, again, I had a question that is left unanswered of what is that number based on. I would like to see that that question answered before I can make a resolution, make it a recommendation or motion for a lower amount. I'd first like to understand.
That number was created based on board discussion when this resolution was first adopted. And prior to this resolution, there was a different authorization. So the board engaged in a lengthy discussion several years ago to discuss what is the right level. There was a recommendation made by staff. The board discussed it. That's how the number came about. That number has increased slightly over certainly my 14 years here, but that's how the number is set. The number is set by the board. And so if you choose to engage in another workshop around this issue to understand what the implications are, because certainly if it's lowered significantly less than 175,000, we may have to hire additional staff to ensure that the processing occurs in a way that is consistent with the board agenda process. So there are a number of implications. So, I mean, that's certainly up to the board, but that number came because of a board discussion when it was initially adopted.
Right, with a board discussion that we weren't part of as this new body. And that's the problem that exists here. I don't think we're being provided information that I don't believe it's adequate for us to just go ahead and approve what has been past practices of former board members just because it was the past practice. Doesn't make it one size doesn't fit all. Because it fit that board doesn't necessarily fit us. I absolutely have a hard time with this amount. I've always had a hard time with this amount, and I like to look at it. And if it's something that we can look at in a retreat or a board, I was waiting for the communication report, like I said, and in the absence of it, it's hard to say what would be a good amount. I'm not saying all of it should come to us. I'm not trying to hinder the college's, the district's business, but we should take a look at these thresholds.
And my point was that's why you look at policies, procedures, and that you do have a in-depth discussion on the item at the appropriate time to make substitute motions at this time for the motion on the floor. The ramifications of your actions, we would not really maybe understand all of them. So that's why sometimes if we as a board want to look at it, we can in the future, obviously, but this particular item is, again, the resolution to the county.
Can this be tabled or moved until we have that discussion, or are we under a mandate to pass this right at this board meeting.
It says it's, this
I
resolution.
am having a hard time with my laptop, so I can't see anything. So just so you
It's
know.
to the end of the current fiscal year, which is coming up, I believe.
This item, in order for agreements to be signed beginning July 1, would need to be adopted today. It is here because this has been a normal practice of the board before this board, before the previous board. So and that doesn't mean you can't question what the policy is, but I mean, if the board as a whole wanted to address this, the board could choose a time and a place between now and the next time this resolution is adopted, because it does come every year, to engage in that discussion, to hear what the local averages are, or to ask the auditor specifically. The auditor is not going to opine on the threshold. The auditor is going to opine on whether or not the college has internal controls that would allow it to ensure that all agreements are signed and have a process in place. Because
Which we've passed with flying colors.
right. So my point here is that the board can revisit this somewhere between now and the next time it's adopted and have a fuller discussion. But if it chooses not to adopt today, then there will be no agreements signed below this threshold beginning July 1 until they come to the board.
You understand that you're putting us, particularly in a very compromising position, that, you know, it's kind of like we're left with no choice. If we would have been educated on this before this board meeting and had that workshop, we would have been able to make that determination and have those benchmarks. And I think it's a little bit unfair to put this before us on June 23rd for July 1st, and you're leaving us with no options. I mean, I know my fellow board members don't seem to have a problem with it. I have a problem with it from a sense of transparency and a matter of making sure that we have rigorous scrutiny. I don't think this provides for rigorous scrutiny with the threshold as it currently states. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Trustee Otto, followed by Trustee Baxter.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little angry about this, and the reason is I haven't heard a single reason why the number that Trustee Zia, why she's uncomfortable with this, other than she's just uncomfortable with this. There's no rationale, no threshold, no independent basis for why why she feels this way about it, except that she feels this way about it. And I take offense that it's insinuated that we're bringing this at the last minute specifically as a way to get around transparency. I take great offense at that. It seems pretty simple to me. If we want to schedule this and look at it, then we can do that. If Trustee Zia wanted to do that, she could have brought it up last month or 2 months ago or 3 months ago. Whenever
I was
she
waiting for the
wanted to.
communication
Excuse me.
report. that
We
you were
could have done that, but that wasn't done. We're now here. It's 10 minutes after 8. We have spent 40 minutes on this subject, and I'm going to call the question.
I'm sorry, we haven't, that's just simply
Whoa,
not
Trustee Zia,
true.
wait.
It's not
From
40
rules-
minutes.
But Trustee Zia, when somebody calls for the question, I immediately then turn to the board secretary, which is now probably to figure out how to do this on board docs, and she's sitting there. But the call of the question by a board member then requires the chair to ask for a vote to whether cease with discussion. So I will ask the board secretary, are you going to look at me and say, how do I do that on board docs? I don't know that answer. But I do know that with the call of the question, there's a roll call vote. The vote is essentially when the board approves the call for the question, it means we will cease discussion. If the motion fails, we will continue discussion. If the motion passes, we'll then immediately turn to the vote on the motion on the floor. That's essentially what it is. So, Madam Secretary, call the question is on the floor. Please ask for the votes of the board.
Irma Archuleta?
Aye.
Virginia Baxter?
No.
Jeff Kellogg?
Aye.
Doug Otto?
Aye.
And Sunny Zia?
No.
Motion carries. We will now go to the actual question.
Question is, you knew I was next. Can I supersede?
That's the question we're saying about when people say call for the question, is it very, unless you want me to start, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I know exactly what you're saying. But when a board member makes that, puts that on the floor, you are asking to cease all discussion immediately. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm just following what traditionally Robert's rules, I think, at this hour. Madam Secretary, we're now on the motion, which was made. So if you could please call on item 8.9, resolution. I'm 8.8, resolution. Thank you.
She already did.
Can we just do this?
We threw something different into
She
the
she
board
just
docs.
called for the motion. We're at 8.9.
No, the resolution, the call for the question took place. That was it. Now we're at the resolution. The call for the question ceased all discussion. Now we're to the motion
Oh,
of
wait,
8.8, resolution. That's what we're now asking for the vote on.
Okay.
And this is only because I'm looking at board docs. I know that causes probably some issues.
Irma Archuleta,
Hi.
Virginia Baxter,
I'm not sure what I'm voting on.
You're voting on an
You're voting on
8.8
the resolution in
resolution.
The
front of you.
resolution.
Contract agreements,
Nay.
amendments to agreements under $175,000. I'm sorry, and your vote, please.
Nay.
Jeff Kellogg,
Aye.
Doug Otto,
Aye.
and Sunny Zia.
Nay.
8.8 passes. We're now to 8.9. Essentially the same scenario for all of you. This is a change order authorization under $100,000. Again, this is the Los Angeles County Office of Education requires submission of this approval annually prior to the end of the current fiscal year. So could I entertain a motion to approve item 8.9 resolution?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Otto. Is there a second, please? Second by trustee Archuleta. Questions, comments, board members on 8.9?
I have a question
Chair
unless,
recognizes trustee Zia.
unless trustee Baxter wants to go.
No, my question was on the other motion. I have no questions.
I think, I mean, I'm pretty much the same questions on this one. I don't know what this threshold is based on, what this amount is. I take offense to people who think I'm just trying to vote against this because of feelings. I haven't heard any objective point of what this threshold is based on, other than this is the way we've done business before. Well, I'm sorry, status quo isn't just going to cut it anymore. We have a new board, and we need to understand, and we need to go through that education process before we make a. Excuse me, I have the floor, Trustee
Trustee
Kellogg.
Zia,
Please
my question is,
please,
Trustee
please,
Zia,
no,
the
Trustee
motion on the
Kellogg, I
floor
have the table.
Item,
I have,
you are
I'm
off
trying
under-
to. I'm trying to ask a question.
Okay, then please ask the question.
I'm trying to get there. Are you censoring me now?
No,
I mean,
I'm just-
then why are you interrupting me? Because every time I interrupt, you guys chastise me. So let me ask my question.
Please do.
Thank you. So what is this amount based on? What is this $100,000 based on, gentlemen? Thank you.
It is based on when the resolution was first adopted by the board. Again, board policy is adopted by the board. At the time the board adopts policy, they have discussions on the policy. It is certainly true that as a new board member, you inherited board policy. You have the ability to change board policy. You can agendize board policy as long as you get the concurrence of the board, and we can have a discussion. You and the rest of the board members were made aware of the board policies when you were oriented, and I understand that you've had questions along the way, and those are understandable and legitimate questions. So with regard to the discussion about the 100,000, I just want to be clear that that discussion was had in the open session in front of the public when this amount was adopted. If you wish to re-agendize that discussion and ask for recommendations of staff, we can do that again.
All right, thank you. Other members of the board, questions on this resolution, 8.9, change order authorization under 100,000. No other comments, questions this
When
time?
was this agendized in the previous board? Was this 3 years ago as well?
I don't have the exact date, but it would have been around the same time.
Other questions? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on item 8.9.
Irma Archuleta.
Aye.
Virginia Baxter.
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg.
Aye.
Doug Otto.
Aye.
Sunny Zia.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. 8.10, 5-year construction plan for 2017 to 2021. This is a action item, so I will need that and I'll read this. The Board of Trustees approve the annual submission of the district's 5-year construction plan for 2017 to 21 and authorize the superintendent president of the district to sign the formal documents that authorize actions on behalf of the district as submitted. Could I entertain a motion to approve prior to having discussion on this item?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Zia,
Second.
second by trustee Baxter.